Can we start with the salawat, please? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Guess it's a bit better, but they tell me on the third day everybody finds it harder. Don't know. Okay. Right, so going back to Asma al-Husna, you should have one of the bookmarks like this. You got a bookmark with you? And hopefully, that's right, and hopefully you can highlight some of the stuff on it, okay? So we're going to start off with a little bit of revision. And before I start off with the revision, we've been reciting these du'as. You've seen the little ones recite the little du'as. You've got du'a al-iftitah. So that's why I picked on Mujib first. So Mujib is number 44. On your bookmarks, you can see that, right? Now, normally, when people ask for du'as, and I'm talking about normally, we ask for stuff that is, that we think is achievable. And we look at our little lives and our little circle, and we think, well, you know what? That's what I'm going to ask for. But I'm going to take you back in history, okay? So I've got some things written down. So there's Prophet Musa. His mom has thrown him in the river, as instructed by Allah. But his mom is promised that he will be back. And Musa has two moms, Yuqabid, which is his birth mother, and he has Asiya as well. I'm just telling you about the impossible to ask for. Zakaria, he had Yahya when he was 90, okay? Yaqub, couldn't see. He cried so much he couldn't see. He prayed for his sight to come back. He came back with a shirt from Yusuf. Let's give you some more examples. Ibrahim, put in the fire. You wouldn't think the fire would cool, but the fire became a garden for him. Musa, we all know about him, came to the river. Didn't know how he would get across, but he knew he would get somewhere, he would be saved. Inna Rabbi Ma'ya Sayahdeen. We went through that before, right? So when you ask for the impossible. Don't think it's not achievable. Okay, don't ask to become taller or, I don't know. I'm not going to go into some things. But ask for that which you might think is impossible, but is achievable, because he is kun fayakun. And always use Ya Mujib before that, okay? If you look at 57:22, and you've got it on the screen, it says, Inna dhalika ala Allahi yasir. For Allah, everything is easy, provided I believe that. Are you good with that? All right, next one. Yesterday we did Ya Aliyu. You remember? When we did Ya Aliyu, Ya Azim. Ya Ghafuru, Ya Rahim. You remember the ones that we did. So when we looked at Ali, higher than anything, in Sajda, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la wa bi Hamdi. Remember Azim, I told you Azim is bones. And in Ruku, you say Subhana Rabbiyal Azimi wa bi Hamdi. This is in Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Every time you read it, think about this. We talked about Ghafar, Ghafur, and Ghafir. Do you remember? I hope. Okay. We talked about the difference between Rahman and Rahim. This is just a little bit of revision. And we did Sami' and we did Basir yesterday. So if you refer to yesterday's video or whatever you want, you might be able to know what we talked about. We also talked about Rahman or Rahim, which was the last bit. Remember? Rahman and Rahim. But if I go back last year, I don't know how many of you were here last year, I did the 3 R's first, which was Rahman, Rahim, and Rauf. And I went over it yesterday as well. I said Rahman was like the dentist. Rahim was like the dental hygienist whom you subscribe to. And Rauf, my goodness. Rauf is an anesthetist. No pain whatsoever. Rauf is the one who understands you when nobody else will understand you. Allah is Rauf. The Prophet is known as Rauf. And Imam Rida is known as Rauf. So you could say, Ya Rauf bihaqqi Rauf. Right? Like we did Ya Ali bihaqqi Ali. Always remember Allah is the first cause. Now when you're in trouble, I talked about this story yesterday. You remember it? Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, bihaqqi bismillahir rahmanir rahim. It's good if you say it with me, because otherwise it's like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Okay. So we talked a little bit about Ghafar, we talked about Ghafur, and this is from last year. We did Tawab and we did Afu. My favorite one is Afu, because in Salatul Layl you say Al-Af 300 times, don't you? Afu is somebody or someone or one who erases the sins completely with no trace. We've got an image of sand. So if you imagine walking on the sand and leaving footprints, and you may imagine the waves coming in and actually rubbing them out, that is afu. So when you want your sins to have no trace at all, al-afu, and Salatul Layl is a good place to start. We also last year did Hayyul Qayyum, and I mentioned it yesterday, Hayy and Qayyum. These are, I hate using the word magical, but they're the core of Asma al-Husna. Every single one emerges from Al-Hayy and Al-Qayyum. If you look at the ahadith of the Prophet, for example, he would say that there are 3 surahs in which there's Isme A'azam. Do you know what Isme A'azam is? Isme A'azam is the great names of Allah. And he named the surahs. There was Baqarah, there was Al Imran. And in essence, if you look at these surahs, you will find Hayy and Qayyum. The names you find in Ayatul Kursi. Allahu la ilaha illa huwal Hayyul Qayyum. Prophet Musa, when he hit the Red Sea with his staff, Ya Allah, Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum. Sayyidah Zahra, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra used to say, you want to ask something? Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum, bi rahmatika astaghithu. Allah, I ask you with your rahmah, help me out of this. So even if you forget every single one, remember Ya Hayyu, Ya Qayyum. And remember the numbers, 62 and 63. Okay, we've got Prophet Musa there, Inna ma'aya Rabbi sayahdi. Yesterday I talked about Mannan. Do you remember? I said Mannan was the one, and normally Hanan and Mannan are put together. So Mannan is the one who gives a lot. And this is a beautiful tongue twister. Maybe you can say it with me. Man manna min mannim munna min al mannan. It is a tongue twister, isn't it? Can you try it? Man manna min mannim munna min al mannan. The kids will love it, okay? Basically, it gives. The more you give, the more you get. And I put the ayah there. So it's Surah Al Imran, ayah 164. But I talked about Mannan being 4 U's. Do you remember? Unlimited, uninterrupted, unasked, and unconditional. To be able to qualify for Mannan, because in the dua we did, Munna alayya. Do you remember we read about it? Okay. So when you qualify for this, this is how you should be giving. Unlimited, uninterrupted, sorry, it's spelled wrong, my job. Unasked and unconditional. So when you give, don't put any conditions. When you give, don't count. When you give, don't interrupt, and people don't have to ask. You just give, okay? Now, one of the names of Allah that the Prophet always said, and I talked about this last year, there was this man sitting in the Mosque of Medina, and he was asking for all these things from Allah. He was pleading to Allah. But the name he used was Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. And the Prophet is watching him, and he tells the companions around him, he doesn't need to ask again, because he's used one of the great names of Allah, which is Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. So let's see what they mean. Jalil is 41, which is mighty. Well, mighty is a bit difficult to say. Basically, it means that which causes awe in the human being, right? Kareem is the generous, the absolutely most generous. Maybe you read Ikra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Khalaqal insana min alaq. Ikra wa rabbukal akram. He's the most generous. He says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhal insan, O human being, ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. What has turned you away from this most generous Rabb? So when you're stuck, when you feel things are not going quite right, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. I'll go back to it. Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. And if you can't remember that, then at least you can remember Ya Kareem. You good? That means, while you're listening to me, you have highlighted a lot of words on here. Rahman, Rahim, Ra'uf. Ghaffar, Ghafoor, Tawwab, and Ra'uf. You have done Sami and Basir. Ali and Azim. You've done Mujib. You've done Hayyul Qayyum, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. Are you good? Right, the next ones are what I will call was. W-A-S. Can you remember that? Wahid, Ahad, and Samad. Let's go back to them. Wahid, Ahad, and Samad. Let's go to what they mean. Wahid is literally the one. In Arabic, Wahid is one. Just one. However, and sometimes you'll find in this, you know, in those nasheeds they do about Asma al-Husna, you may not find Wahid in there, but just remember Wahid. Ahad is the unique one. You see, Qul huwallahu ahad. You recite that surah 3 times, it's like completing the Quran. So ahad, and the other one is samad. Samad is the one on whom all depend. I keep on saying this story a lot of times about Prophet Musa, and this guy is looking at his idol, and he's saying, Ya Sanam. And then his eyes are closing, and he's saying, Ya Samad. And Allah says, Labbaik Ya Abdi. And Musa says, Ya Allah, he wasn't calling you. And Allah says, I know, but even if somebody calls me Ya Samad by mistake, I will respond. So that's another name of Allah that you might want to remember. Now there is a dua. Sometimes people want an immediate response. Like when you've gone to WhatsApp and somebody hasn't switched their thing onto private or whatever, I don't know what they do, but you see 2 blue ticks, so you know they've read it. And you just keep on looking at the phone. You might not do that, I do that, okay? Especially if it's my kids. And I think, what the heaven? You've seen it, can't you reply? If not, I call them, but that's okay. Now here you want an immediate response from Allah. So I'd like you to read this with me. Allahumma inni asaluka. Are you good with that? Allahumma inni asaluka. That's quite easy, right? Bi annaka antallahu la ilaha illa ant. That's easy as well. Allahumma inni asaluka. And you know what? Allah knows English as well. So Allah, I'm asking you, bi annaka antallahu la ilaha illa ant, because you, there is no God but you. So even if you said Allahumma inni asaluka, I know you are la ilaha illallah. Can you do that? Okay, you're good with that. Now you use his names. Al-Ahadus Samad. Continually. Al-Ahadus Samad. You know when Bilal was being tortured, he was put on the hot sand and a hot rock was put on him. And they kept on saying, Bilal, just say that you believe in the gods of Quraysh. He kept on saying, Al-Ahadun Ahad. You're in pain, the pain will go away. Al-Ahadus Samad. Can you repeat that? Al-Ahadus Samad. Alladhi lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. It is not rocket science. If you're all on this group, on this Q Fatima update group or the Ramadan group or whatever, I'll make sure I put it on the updates group so you have that dua with you, okay? Can you read it with me, please? Allahumma inni as'aluka. And then, bi annaka antallahu la ilaha illa ant. Al-ahadus samad. Alladhi lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Memorize it. You know, we live in an age when we want instant answers. But my mama used to say that be very careful what you ask for. In Gujaratis, they say, Palai ruche to munda ukhapse. You know what that means, don't you? Now you've soaked it, you've got to use it. Right? So be very careful what you ask for. Sometimes what you ask for is not that which you'd want. So be very careful when you, this is like one of those powerful du'as, okay? You good? Okay. Next one. Can you remember just give me? What was the last one? W-A-S. Now you're going to remember just give me. Are you good with that? Okay. J is for Jami', one who brings things together. And that's 87. How are you going to remember that? Because give is 88, which is Ghani, the one who is rich. Now, if you've been to, and you have to be pretty old to go to these bingo places. Have you been to a bingo place? Thank God for that. Okay. But people go there. I have neighbors who are senior citizens. I'm one myself. I'm 66. I haven't been there yet before. But I know people who go. And when they call out the number 88, they say 2 fat ladies. Can you remember 2 fat ladies? Can you remember 88? And can you remember rich? Are you good with that? Mind you, these days, rich people eat less than poor people, okay? Because they live on lettuce. Sorry, I didn't want to go there. Okay, 87, 88, 89. Just give me. Jami, Ghani, and Mughni. Can you remember that? Just give me. And which number was give? Which number was it? 88. And you remember that. 2 fat ladies. Yes, you can't forget that. Okay. There's nothing wrong in being big, okay? It's quite good. I have a very good friend, and she used to say, my husband refuses for me to lose weight. And I would say, why? And she would say, because he says there's more of you to love if you're a bit bigger. I thought that was beautiful. I wish he would say that. Anyway, so just give me. Are you good with that? Jami, Ghani, and Mughni. Now, Ghani here, richness, as you say what the Prophet said, is not defined by ownership of material possessions. It's contentment of the heart. It's how you feel inside. It doesn't matter if you live in a hut. I used to say it in East Africa. If you live in a hut, do you know what ugali is? Oh, God. Really? Ugali is made out of rice flour. Right? It's this stodgy thing. And then they have it with spinach. You know that? Or any greens that are available. And you could offer the maids over there the best food. They will say, we want ugali and posha, they used to call it, right? Oh, you know it. Okay, good. So it doesn't matter where you live or what you have. It is the contentment. I'm going to tell you a story so you don't forget Ghani. So I had a very good friend. She was in her 90s. And she lived in South London. Every day for Wednesday classes, she used to drive over. And you know, when you're 90, you have to renew your driving license every year. Do you know that? So she used to renew her driving license, and she'd bring all her friends across. And she used to come across. So one day, she died last year. But when she was alive, I went to visit her. And I went to visit her at a massive mansion. Upstairs, I think she had about 12 bedrooms, each with their own bathroom, and each was decorated in different countries. Like one was Mediterranean, one was Italian. You know, the bedrooms were like that. I won't give you her name. Let me call her Auntie Fatima. So Auntie Fatima used to live downstairs. She hadn't been upstairs for about 5 years. And I said, but Auntie Fatima, why? Why do you not go to a, you know, to a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment? What is all this? And she'd say, I don't know, something's stopping me. But she would say, all this is nothing, absolutely nothing. What is important is the contentment I get when I learn the Quran. Okay? And I'm trying to tell you that that's what rich means. Rich in here. It doesn't matter whether you're rich in or out, but in is more important than anything else. Are you good with that? You remember Ghani now, right? So when you want to be rich inside, Al-Ghani, or Ya Ghani, okay? Jami, you know, is gathered, puts things together. And Mughni is one who is enriched. How shall I put it? When you have a meme before something, let's give you an example. Do you know what Jalasa means? Jalasa means to sit. Majlis, a place where you sit. Sajada means to prostrate. Masjid, a place where you prostrate. So Mughni is the one who enriches you. One is rich, one enriches you. So you need both, 88 and 89. You can't just call on him and say, hello, I know you've got it, but I need it too. You good? Okay. You could, because he knows the numbers as well. And it's good to know numbers and the names together and their meanings. And once you learn all of them, you'll be able to, it'll be wonderful. Because then at particular situations, you'll use particular ones. So for example, Ash-Shafi is not in here. But it's ingrained into me that if I were to give medicine to my grandchildren now, you can't do it to children anymore, okay, because they say, Mama, I've Googled it, okay? But the grandchildren, for example, if you're giving them Calpol, you have in your head, when you say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, that ism you replace with Ash-Shafi. So now when I'm feeling a little bit poor, in the sense I feel that the heart is not big enough to give something out, I know when I say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the ism I will use is Ghani or Mughni, or 88 and 89. I'm hoping by the end of the month you will know all these, and they will all be highlighted like that. At the moment, they're like a bit flaky. Are you good with that? All right, so just to go over, which ones do you know? Rahman, Rahim, and Ra'uf. Ghaffar, Ghafoor, Tawab, and Afu. You know Mujib. What other ones do you know? Hayyul, Qayyum, Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. And you know Jalil and Kareem. Okay, what else? Was, Wahid, Ahad, Samad. Just give me. Jami. Come on. Ghani and Mughni. You got to engage. I know you're fasting. So am I. Okay? It's a good idea to engage and get into it. And keep on repeating them again and again and again. But today I'd like to start Duha. Okay, so Surah Al-Duha, we're going to start it. Now let's look at the history of Surah Al-Duha. So the Prophet has a pause in revelation. You can imagine, every day there's communication, and then there's a pause. He's sad. He's really, really sad. And the way they lived in Medina was that the walls were not high right up. And if you lived next door, you could actually hear what was going on, right? So next door to him lived Abu Lahab and his wife Jamila. They were the power couple, the posh and becks of Makkah, okay? Power couple. And they found that he was quiet because what he learned during the day, what Jibreel would bring, whether it was day or night, he would repeat it again and again. And they started mocking him. They said, "What happened to that God of yours?" The Makkans started mocking him as well. And he was really, really sad. So you can imagine, I'm going to give you an example. My son calls me every time he's coming back from work. It could be 6 o'clock, it could be 7 o'clock, it could be 8 o'clock. He'll say, "Mama, how you doing?" Whatever. When he doesn't call one day, I don't feel right. His fault, he spoiled me. Okay? So even if it's a 2-minute call or a 2-second call, I need to hear that voice. I have his adhan on tape, I'll put it on, but it doesn't do the same. I need to hear him live. Problem is when he gets home with the 4 kids, he doesn't pick up the phone again. I'm sure he's listening to this. Anyway, so that phone call means a lot to me. Same with the Prophet. Probably much, much more. Because Allah was in contact with him all the time. And suddenly it's quiet. And so many thoughts are going in his head. So much. And then this surah comes. And it's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So that is the history of the surah. If you look at the focus of the surah, it's the relationship between Allah and His Messenger. And I talked about my son. I'd love to have that sort of relationship with Allah. That when you don't feel that fullness in Him, there's something wrong. Okay? When you don't get the lutf of salah, when you don't get the lutf of Quran, you feel bad. Even the lutf of Sawm, of fasting, it must give you so much pleasure that when you read the dua and say, if it was a jadiyah, that you're waiting for the month, and at the end of the month, you really cry that it's going, not happy because Eid is coming. Okay? So that's sort of relationship you and I want. So it starts off with what duha. Now there's 3 times that we need to know of the day. You all know Fajr, right? So when is Fajr? When is Fajr? When sunrise occurs, right? When the sun is starting to come up. Are you good with that? The second one is duha. Duha is early morning. About, maybe what time do you go to school to drop your kids? About 8 o'clock? Sort of people coming to life, the light is soothing, it's not that hot. If you went for a walk about 7:38, it's quite all right. The light is soothing and life is stirring, right? The other that you need to know is shuruk. So 3 mornings you need to know. Fajr, Duha and shuruk. Shuruk is late morning. But Duha is that time when it's bright, when it's daytime, but it's soothing and there's movement going on. I repeat again. Bright, daylight, and there's movement going on, right? You good? Okay, so you're stirring, you're coming up. Duha, the Mufassirin have related to revelation. Because that's what revelation does. Quran guides you. There's a brightness you can see with it, right? Quran is soothing. Even if you didn't understand, you just put the Quran on. There is something it does to your insides. It provides you with that light. And Quran stirs you. It should be able to raise something inside you. I told you about barakah. Do you remember? When we talked about barakah, I said, when the Prophet's sermon, he said this month had 3 things. Do you remember that? Oh, come on. You can't be that asleep. Barakah, Rahmah, and Maghfirah. And I told you about Surah Al-Dukhan, which you recite in Laylatul Qadr. That the book was revealed in Laylatul Mubarakatun. Do you remember that? When you tell somebody, Khushali Mubarak, what are you telling them? When you say to somebody, Eid Mubarak, when you say Ramadan Mubarak, what are you saying? I'm asking. When you say somebody Mubarak Itane, What the heaven are you saying? There you go, you say congratulations. But barakah means two things. And I've mentioned it, I'll repeat it again. One is that you get more than you deserve and more than you expect. And the second one is that it wakes up that which is dormant inside you. When you say Ramadan Mubarak, that's what you mean. When you say Mubarak to someone, you know, when I got married 48 years ago, okay, long time, but ancient, okay? When I got married 48 years ago, I remember my parents made a list, well, my mother made a list of all the things that were given to me. They don't do that anymore. So if it was £5, it was written down. But when that person's family got married, you had to give better. You could never give the same. You'd have, and you'd never give less, definitely not. You always gave better. I remember saying, why are you making a list? She'd say, so I know, but it doesn't matter what you can manage. And she'd say, well, that's what we do. And it didn't make sense then. It makes sense now. When somebody does salam to you, you say salam back or better. And that's what Quran does. Quran gives you more than you expect, more than you deserve, and revelation also stirs in you that which was dormant. That which was asleep, it brings it up again. Okay? Right. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. So these are two oaths. So the first oath, and when Allah swears, He doesn't have to swear to prove that He's right. He's truth in itself. He swears to emphasize to you and me the importance of what He's swearing. So He's saying, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. I'm hoping tomorrow morning at about 7:38, the first thing you will think of is Quran. And if nothing else, you will recite Surah Al-Ikhlas or Surah Al-Fatiha. وَاللَّيْلِ. So He says, and the night when it is still. Sajal al-Bahar means when the waves of the sea are still. So He's saying even the time when there's not an answer, that's peace, that's stillness. It's not talking about the darkness of the night. He says relax, be calm, wait. It's coming. You need that time to reflect. So the Prophet is told, even though you thought it was darkness, it was a time of reflection. It was a time of peace. It was a time of calmness. It's a time to show it. They tell you that the stars only come out in the dark. You know that? Right? Okay, so وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. Are you good with those two? Incidentally, if you're ever feeling anxious, if you're ever feeling depressed, if you're ever feeling lonely, in Quran City we've put it as comfort zone. The Prophet used to recite Duha and Inshira and used to go for a long walk. But if you can't go for a long walk, because you'd have to take all your kids together, right? Been there, done it, all the rest of it. Sit down and recite Duha and Inshira. Actually calms children down as well. Okay, now we're going to look at three things, okay? So now this is comfort. He's saying, Ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma kala. Ma not. Do you know what wida means? In Urdu, Gujarati, everybody knows what wida means. What's wida mean? To say goodbye. Wadda means to say goodbye forever. That's what wadda means. So He's saying, Ma wadda'aka rabbuka. Just because it's been quiet doesn't mean that He's forgiven, He's forgotten you, that He's saying goodbye to you forever. If my son didn't call once, I have to in my head think he's busy, the connection is not right because he lives way in Bournemouth and he goes through the forest, the new forest, and maybe the connection wasn't right. So you give 70 excuses. Ma doesn't mean that he stopped thinking I'm his mama, okay? Ma wadda'aka rabbuka. Your Rabb has not said goodbye forever. Wama qala. Now you need to know what qala is. Qala is when you outgrow something. Qala is also used for washing powder. So when you use washing powder and you put do you put a sachet or something in your washing machine? I don't know what you put, whatever you use in your washing machine. Once it's washed the clothes, you don't even think about it because it's done its job and it's discarded. In fact, you get fed up because when you put it in the washing machine, it leaves that little residue behind and you have to clean it, right? Agreed? No, you don't? I do. Okay. So qala, every time you see washing powder, think wama qala. So He's saying, Muhammad, ma wadda'aka rabbuka wama Kala. Your Rabb has not said goodbye to you forever, and neither are you qala, neither have you outgrown your usefulness. The very fact that Allah says this means the Prophet, being ma'soom, still thought, what have I done wrong? Somebody who never did wrong thought, what did I do wrong? So, ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala. I always get asked this question. How do you know whether it's a test or a punishment from Allah? Is this something you get asked all the time? You know, you think in your head, people say, this thing is happening to me. Is it a test or a punishment? If it is a punishment, it will take you away from Allah. If it is a test, it will take you towards Allah. So if you think something's happening to you and you are calling Him out a lot more, no, it's a test. If something's happening to you that's not right and you're thinking, this God has let me down, then know that it is a punishment. Are you good? Yes? No? Maybe? Perhaps? Okay. مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. And then Allah is telling him, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. What is to come will be so much better, so much nicer, so much better. Your legacy will be phenomenal. Don't be sad. It's okay. Akhirah is not the akhirah you and I think of only. Akhirah means that which comes after. So, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. وَلَسَوْفَ means soon in the future, يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Allah will give you that which will please you. So what do you think the Prophet wanted? Anybody? I'm trying to engage you, by the way. If I were to ask the Prophet today, or at that time, Ya Rasulullah, what would you like? What would he say? Okay? He would probably say, I want every human being to reach their full potential. I want every human being to connect to Allah. I want to be able to make sure this Quran is used as hidayah, as guidance for every human being. So that's what Allah is telling. وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. Your Rabb will give you that. And in those 24 years, I mean, a community that buried daughters alive. A community that if you did not fit in with their social status, they would chuck you out of the town. They didn't want you there. If you didn't match their social status, forget it. You weren't there. And he looked at all this zulm and he's thinking, how is it going to end? Only with the Quran will it end. And then he probably looks at me and says, oh my goodness, what are you doing with the Quran? You're just keeping it on a shelf and reading it in the month of Ramadan. Is something wrong with you? You read Rahman when somebody's getting married, and you read it, Yasin when somebody dies. What's wrong with you? And here he's saying, وَلَسَوْفَ يُعْطِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. I need you to remember the number 3, because it'll keep on coming. When we do duha and inshara, it'll keep on coming. I'm going to go back so you know. First 2 oaths. وَالضُّحَى. Can you imagine what duha is now? You know what duha is. You know the 3 times of the morning. Fajr, duha, and? What was the third one? Shuruk? No? Yes? Okay. What was Fajr? Dawn. Duha? Early morning. Shuruk? Late morning. Are you good? The other schools of thought also have a salah to be prayed in late morning. Okay? وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. Sometimes, when you think it's dark, it's not dark. It's just stillness. It's calmness. You need to reflect, right? The very fact that many of you from last year have forgotten what was said means there was no reflection, me included, okay? All right, now 3 things. مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. For you and me also, he will never say goodbye to you. You could do the worst possible things. You take 1 step towards him, he'll take 100 towards you. That's what he says. Nobody can convince you that you are lost forever, because he said, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. You're never like washing powder, never. To human beings maybe, but never to God. وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. What is to come is so much better. The past is a lesson. The present is a gift. That's why it's called the present. But the future, my goodness, you could do so much. وَلَسَوْفَ يُؤْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. He will definitely give you that which will make you happy. If you find yourself in a place where you can't see light ahead of you, light at the end of tunnel, continually recite, وَلَسَوْفَ يُؤْتِيكَ رَبُّكَ فَتَرْضَى. think I've got a little bit of time for the next 3. Now, that was comfort. Now Allah is reminding him. So this is a reminder, and this is more like gratitude. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. Did we not find you an orphan? Fa'awa. Isti'wa is, isti'wa means when a wound gets better. So the Prophet is being told, and ma'wa, you say Jannatul Ma'wa. It's a place of refuge. You had nobody. Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa. We actually found you a place of refuge. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى. We found you lost in the sense you didn't know how to bring the Quran to these people. You didn't know how these people would recognize you as a prophet. We guided them to you. The Prophet wasn't lost. People were lost in not recognizing the Prophet. وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. And we found you in need. And remember Ghani, what number was it? 88. So when you read this, you remember Khadija, you remember Abu Talib, who looked after him when he was an orphan. At the bottom you remember Khadija, but وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى is attributed only to divinity. Are you good with that? So we got 3 for comfort, 3 for gratitude. Let's go again. 2 oaths. وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى. Now we've got comfort. مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا كلا وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يؤتيك ربك فترضى. Then we've got gratitude. ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى. Do you think you could remember those? And inshallah we will continue with this tomorrow and some more Asma'ul Husna. Right, can we read the Surah Al-Fatiha? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العظيم. As I tell the children, close your eyes, ask Allah to give the thawabs to all the marhumin, especially those of your family. Pray for those who are ill and those who are in trouble. لي خمسة عطفي بها هر الوباء الحاتمة المصطفى والمرتضى وأبناهما والفاطمة. جزاكم الله خير.